Back in 1912, British newspapers were buzzing with one bold claim: the first humans appeared in Britain, not Africa. It felt like history itself had been rewritten, and everyone bought into it. Crowds cheered, scientists raised their glasses, and the tiny village of Piltdown in Sussex suddenly became the spotlight for what was hailed as the greatest evolutionary discovery ever. It all happened thanks to this guy, Charles Dawson, a curious amateur archaeologist who was dreaming of making a name in science. He claimed he had found bone fragments of a transitional creature between apes and humans. Dawson teamed up with Arthur Smith Woodward, a respected geologist from the Natural History Museum, and together they assembled fragments of skulls, teeth, and even primitive tools. They unveiled their find, the Piltdown Man, to the Geological Society, and for decades everyone believed it. Textbooks even rewrote human evolution around it, and entire generations memorized it as pure truth. But here's the twist. In 1949, new technology to determine the precise age of objects came along, and things just didn't add up. Tests showed that the skull was only about 50,000 years old, not hundreds of thousands. Then came an even bigger shock. The skull and jaw didn't even belong to the same species. Someone had combined a human skull with the jaw of an ape, probably an orangutan. And even worse, they filed down the teeth to make them look more human and stained the bones to match the surrounding gravel. A Frankenstein fossil and its creator managed to trick the entire world into believing they'd found a missing piece of humanity's puzzle. So Dawson went down in scientific history, but probably not the way he was hoping to. And he wasn't the only one. Some did it for money, others for fame. In the late 19th century Paris, museums were collecting ancient treasures like they were trading cards. When a stunning gold tiara, supposedly belonging to an ancient Scythian king, Saitaphernes, appeared on the market, the Louvre had to have it. It was breathtaking, detailed, majestic, fit for a ruler. The museum proudly paid a fortune and displayed it as a masterpiece of ancient craftsmanship. Then came the heartbreak. A few years later, an entrepreneurial goldsmith from Odessa read about the Louvre's glorious find and burst out laughing. He recognized the tiara because he made it with his own hands. It was a modern piece, a commission he created for local dealers, except they never told him they planned to pass it off as an ancient treasure. The Louvre was humiliated. Once again, the whole world believed in a beautiful lie, and the goldsmith who had just made the museum look ridiculous ended up famous in the world of art. The tiara still holds the Guinness World Record for the greatest goldsmith fraud of all time. Another story of a well-planned scientific hoax takes us to a quiet town of Cardiff, New York, a couple of decades before the Louvre incident. In 1869, workers digging a well struck something hard and enormous. They uncovered what looked like a petrified 10-foot-tall man lying in the earth. Crowds poured in from miles around to see it. Preachers called it proof of the biblical giants mentioned in Genesis. Scientists debated whether it was fossilized or divine. Within days, the Cardiff giant became a sensation. People paid good money to see it, 50 cents a ticket, which was a lot back then. Later, it turned out that a man named George Hull carved the mysterious giant from gypsum after an argument with a Methodist reverend. Hull just wanted to prove how easily you can fool people, especially religious believers, unlike himself. So he buried the fake giant, and it worked too well. Even after experts exposed the hoax, visitors didn't care. They kept coming because they wanted to believe. Over time, the giant changed ownership several times. You can now see it at the Fenimore Farm and Country Village Museum in Cooperstown, New York. Well, speaking of museums, you might have seen crystal skulls that glow under light, presented as sacred artifacts from Mesoamerican temples. Yes, that skull from an Indiana Jones movie with ancient Aztec powers or even extraterrestrial energy. So, museums displayed such skulls proudly until scientists at the British Museum and the Smithsonian decided to give them a closer look. And what they found shattered the myth. They found that the skulls were made with modern rotary tools and abrasives that ancient carvers didn't have. In other words, Someone in the 1800s or 1900s made them using modern machinery and fooled the world. They weren't messages from deities or some advanced creatures from space, just very fancy paperweights that tricked so many people into believing in some ancient superpowers. Well, let's jump several decades closer to the present day, shall we? In the 1960s, Yale University revealed what looked like a discovery that could rewrite world history: a 15th century map showing North America labeled Vinland. It meant Vikings had mapped America long before Columbus. The headlines were sensational. The idea was romantic. Explorers crossing icy seas century before Europe even knew America existed. But something just didn't add up. The parchment was generally medieval, but the ink wasn't. Decades of testing revealed it contained titanium dioxide, a pigment invented in the 20th century. In 2021, Yale confirmed it. The Vinland map was a modern forgery, drawn over old parchment to make it look ancient. It wasn't proof of Viking genius, but rather of human cleverness on one side and the tendency to be easily persuaded on the other. And when we speak of persuasion, you don't have to try too hard when a really trustworthy source like National Geographic shares something, right? Well, in 1999, it presented what it thought was the ultimate discovery: a fossil that bridged the gap between dinosaurs and birds. It was called Archaeoraptor, and it was going to change everything we knew about evolution. The fossil came from China, and on first glance, it was perfect: a dinosaur tail, bird-like wings, and bones that seemed to tell the story of flight's evolution. But soon, paleontologists started whispering. The bones didn't quite line up. CT scans revealed the ugly truth. It was literally glued together from parts of different species. A dinosaur tail from one fossil, a bird body from another. Someone had Frankensteined the fossils to make a more valuable specimen. The embarrassment hit hard, especially for National Geographic, which had built an entire story around a fake the world liked to believe. Now, if you think scientific hoaxes are all in the past because of all the 20th century high-tech, here's a surprise for you. In 2020, the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C. made a stunning confession. All 16 fragments of its prized Dead Sea Scroll collection were modern forgeries. They'd spent millions acquiring what they thought were sacred 2,000-year-old texts, only to learn they were made of ancient leather painted with modern ink. The forgery was so advanced that even experts were fooled at first. But after detailed forensic tests, it became clear the holy relics were anything but holy. It wasn't just about money, it was about faith. Thousands of visitors had stood in front of those glass cases, feeling awe, reverence, and connection, only to learn it was a show built on lies. And finally, it's time for one of the eeriest hoaxes of all. In 2000, a mummy surfaced in Pakistan, claiming to be a 26-year-old Persian princess, the daughter of Xerxes. They found her in a gilded sarcophagus, wrapped in golden robes. Her face was eerily well preserved. Archaeologists were stunned, but something about her looked wrong. CT scans, linguistic analysis, and radiocarbon dating revealed the horrifying truth. The mummy wasn't ancient at all. She was a modern woman, and someone likely took her life and then mummified her to sell as a fake relic. Well, yikes. The story went from exciting to tragic overnight and broke many hearts. What was supposed to be a royal miracle turned out to be a human crime and yet another lie. All these stories have one thing in common: hope. People want to believe. They want to touch the past, to find proof that connects them to something bigger. Whether it's scientists looking for the missing link, museums wanting fame, or believers searching for signs of faith, we all crave wonder. History is full of tricksters, and sometimes the best stories come from the fakes that fooled us all. In the UK, there are around 115,000 mailboxes, with some of them placed in questionable locations. Look here, we're on a deserted stretch of Caithness Moorhead, And here, just smack dab in the middle of nowhere, between the quarry and some moorland, stands a solitary mailbox. It was local teacher Chris Aitken who stumbled upon this oddity near Worth Hill, close to John O'Groats. Now, John O'Groats is a tiny village 2.5 miles northeast of Canisbay, in the historic county of Caithness, Scotland. The village itself is popular with tourists, but only houses around 300 people on a regular basis, and they have their own mailboxes there. So why would someone need one on a random hill? When Chris shared a photo online, someone chimed in with a theory. A while back, an entrepreneur was selling tiny parcels of land near Campster, claiming buyers became lairds with their little plots. Could this mailbox be related to that? Now, the box, proudly labeled Laird of John O'Groats, features the name Thorsten Sommer and an address in Germany. There's a PIN number on the front, but when Chris opened it, all he found was a website link. The site has pics of Sommer waving a Scottish flag and talking about his love for Scotland, even calling himself the Old Scotsman. Chris tried reaching out through the website for more info, but hasn't heard back. It might be linked to Sommer's reported purchase of a tiny patch of land, but buying Scottish laird titles is often seen as a fraud, giving no real title at all. The area around Worth Hill has had some recent police action too, after a body was found nearby. Ooh, could that somehow be connected to this mysterious mailbox too? Well, enough of the detective stories. Let's dive into some high-end fashion, shall we? So, you might have come across that funky image popping up all over the internet, claiming there's a pop-up Prada store in the Texas desert. Well, it's kind of true and kind of not. Yes, there's a shop, sort of. It showcased a whole range of Prada gear worth around $80,000. And guess what? Miuccia Prada herself handpicked the items. But still, you couldn't buy a single thing there. No cashiers, no shop assistants. It was like the place was permanently closed. The twist? It's actually an art installation. Made entirely of biodegradable materials, it was designed to gradually blend back into nature, taking a fun jab at our current consumer culture. But why display goods you can't actually buy? Well, it's a metaphor for the elusive charm of luxury. While it was meant to decay in peace, the hype surrounding it led to a surprising amount of foot traffic and even some chaos. After trying to fend off a few would-be thieves, the artist had to admit defeat. Now it's a hotspot for photos, drawing everyone from tourists to celebrities. Right, you can find a brand purse in the desert, but can you, let's say, find a car somewhere in Welsh caves? Well, the answer is yes, and let me tell you, it's not just one car, but many of them. The Cavern of Lost Souls is a well-known abandoned car cave tucked away in Wales. Once upon a time, it was a slate mine in Ceredigion, where workers pulled out tons of slate and transported it using narrow-gauge horse-drawn tramways. But as the mining industry faded away decades ago, the mine fell into a hush. If you dare go inside, which I personally do not recommend, you'll find two large chambers, but one is particularly noteworthy. The main chamber plunges around 65 feet deep and is mostly underwater, with just a small opening above. Since the mine shut down, locals and the council have taken advantage of that opening, tossing in all sorts of unwanted stuff. You'll find everything from fridges and TVs to even whole cars piled up in one corner. What makes the Cavern of Lost Souls special is the single beam of light that breaks through, casting its glow on the twisted heap of wrecked cars and metal. The water, when hit by that light, glows a stunning turquoise green, creating beautiful reflections of the cars and cavern walls on the still surface. Every now and then, a fragment of slate falls, shattering the quiet and sending ripples across the water. There was yet another weird find in Wales. A shiny 10-foot silver monolith recently popped up on Hay Bluff in Powys, Wales, and it's sparking a ton of curiosity. A local builder, Craig Muir, discovered it during his hike, and he described it as looking like it just dropped down from space. It's made of surgical steel, has no markings, and is super well crafted without visible welds. Muir's find is reminiscent of those mysterious monoliths that popped up worldwide in 2020, creating quite a buzz online. Local Richard Haynes suggested it could be some kind of scientific installation, but with national park rules against unauthorized structures, it might not be there for long. With no visible tracks around it, Muir speculated it could have been brought in by a group or even dropped from a helicopter. Now, this isn't the first strange monolith sighting. Similar ones have been spotted in Utah, the Isle of Wight, and even Glastonbury Tor, where one was humorously marked, "Not Banksy." However, it could be easily him. The UK is the leading country in terms of the number of Banksy's pieces of art. As of 2023, there were 70 of them. No wonder, as he is reportedly British and was born in Bristol. The Atacama Desert in northern Chile, the driest non-polar desert on Earth, features a bizarre sight at kilometer mark 1309 on the Pan American Highway, a giant cement hand that towers 36 feet above the sand. Looks creepy, right? Well, worry not. It's not some creepy monster trying to grip you and take you to the netherworld. It's not an ancient relic from a lost civilization either. A professional sculptor created this quirky landmark back in 1992. Despite its remoteness, the hand is frequently targeted by graffiti, so local volunteers must clean it up twice a year. And by the way, it's not the only landmark of this kind. The very same sculptor also created a similar hand in Punta del Este, Uruguay, called Man Emerging to Life, and it represents the idea that a giant might be holding South America in a stone grip. Hey, works for me. Now check out this giant stone sphere hidden in the forest of Bosnia's Visoko Valley. What do you think? Is it an ancient relic or a modern art installation? Share your thoughts in the comments. But to be completely frank with you, which I always am, nobody really knows for sure. Experts think this sphere, which measures around 10 feet across, is just a naturally occurring rock formation called a concretion. These iron-rich balls get their reddish color from the high iron content and form when mineral particles stick together over time. While concretions can take on some pretty wild shapes, the exact process of how they form is still a bit of a mystery. Then there's this archaeologist, often called the Bosnian Indiana Jones, who claims it's actually a man-made artifact from over 1,000 years ago. Spherical concretions aren't unique to Bosnia, though. You can find them all over the world, like these boulders in New Zealand, massive round stones that are over 60 million years old. There are also cannonball concretions in North Dakota. And let's not forget about the man-made stone spheres crafted by the Diquis people in Costa Rica, which are perfectly shaped and arranged, definitely a testament to human creativity. So while the Bosnian sphere is super intriguing, it's probably just an ancient concretion and not a remnant of a lost civilization. Bummer. Finally, some things are so well hidden that you have to go deep down into the seafloor to get a glimpse of them. Once a hedonistic hotspot for the Roman elite, Baia was like the Las Vegas of its time, but now its ruins are submerged underwater. This resort city thrived on volcanic hot springs and attracted the likes of Nero and Caesar, who even built vacation villas there. However, in the 8th century, Baia lost a battle and was abandoned by 1500. As the water levels rose, much of the city was lost beneath the bay. Today, you can explore Baia's ancient ruins in one of the few underwater archaeological parks in the world. Hold your breath.
Egypt has ruled as the owner of the world's oldest pyramid, until now. A newly discovered structure in Indonesia may predate Egypt by thousands of years. If this is true, it rewrites history. The world's first pyramid was born during the last ice age, and it's now located in the middle of the jungle. At first glance, Gunung Padang does not exactly scream pyramid. It looks more like a big mound with scattered stones tossed all over it. But recent excavations have revealed that far beneath the surface, there are stone structures buried in multiple layers, deeper and much older than anyone expected. We're talking possibly 27,000 years old. This is serious if we're talking about humankind's history. Today, the oldest known ancient society with this kind of building knowledge is probably 11,000 years old and used to occupy the region of modern-day Turkey. We've talked about Göbekli Tepe in some of our previous videos. Gunung Padang has got the scientific community divided and raising big, life-changing questions. You see, the site of Gunung Padang has long been considered sacred by the locals. Many even call it the Mountain of Enlightenment, and still use the site to perform mystical ceremonies. Westerners had no clue this place existed until the late 1800s. That's when a Dutch explorer heard whispers about a strange mountain and went to see it for himself. Just 4 hours south of Jakarta, he found something wild. Stacked terraces connected by rough stone steps, massive flat stones covering the ground, and towering pillars everywhere. To him, it looked like an ancient ceremonial site, maybe even a burial ground. For almost 100 years, mainstream archaeologists simply ignored Gunung Padang. The story resurfaced when a group of farmers brought attention back to the mountain in 1979. By the 80s, researchers finally started digging and found pottery fragments dating back to somewhere between 45 BCE to 22 CE. But here's where this story gets interesting. Some studies suggest the deepest layers of Gunung Padang are between 16 to 27,000 years old. That means this pyramid could have been built during the last ice age. And if that's true, it's older than Egypt's famous pyramids, the ones we thought were the world's first. This whole theory comes from geologist Danny Hillman. His team used ground-penetrating radar, core drilling, and carbon dating to study Gunung Padang. And what they found was pretty wild. According to Hillman, this place is like a giant ancient layer cake, built in stages over thousands of years. The youngest layer is around 3,000 to 4,000 years old. That's roughly the age of the pyramids in Egypt. When you dig a little deeper, you find Unit 2, which was built between 7,500 and 8,000 years ago. But here's where things get truly mind-blowing. Hillman claims the deepest layer, Unit 3, could be as old as 27,000 years old. His study suggests that Gunung Padang isn't just a hill, it's a stepped pyramid, complete with chambers and hollow spaces hidden underground. Although there's not much info about these chambers. The geologist does admit his theory sounds crazy, but he says it's all real and legitimate data. Hey, this is just one theory. Those who disagree with Hillman say Gunung Padang was not man-made. It was nature-made. Maybe not the upper parts, which Hillman calls Unit 1. The lowest units, which are the units that could change our collective history, are the problem. To understand what the fuss is about, we need to look at the soil. The area that Gunung Padang was built on is filled with volcanoes, which means it sits on top of volcanic soil. Hillman's team drilled into the mound and found something odd. Younger soil wedged between much older rock layers. To them, this was a clear sign that the stones were stacked, not naturally formed. After all, in nature, younger soil doesn't just sink beneath ancient rock. That would be like discovering fresh ink beneath the pages of an ancient manuscript. You know, something doesn't add up unless someone put it there on purpose. However, skeptics such as volcanologist Zoetkenel Braunthal argue that Gunung Padang is not a human-made pyramid, but rather the remains of an ancient volcano. He believes the mixed layers of young soil and old rock are the result of natural erosion and geological processes, not human construction. Volcanic activity can create unusual formations over time, and without clear signs of tools, carvings, or human remains, many experts remain unconvinced. The mystery boils down to this paradox. Are we looking at the ruins of a lost civilization, or are we simply misinterpreting the work of nature? Most archaeologists say that to prove an ancient civilization existed, you first need signs of culture, art, tools, structures, something man-made. That's exactly why archaeologist Dibble, one of Hillman's biggest critics, isn't buying the pyramid theory. He argues that without solid proof of human activity, all we really know is that the soil in the mound is 27,000 years old, and that alone doesn't mean people were building pyramids back then. But here's the thing. The more we dig into ancient history, the more we find that our ancestors were capable of things we never imagined. The idea of advanced civilizations existing during the Ice Age seems far-fetched to many archaeologists. After all, who could have the technology and knowledge to build massive structures like pyramids in such a harsh environment? This is where some researchers, particularly Graham Hancock, come in. Hancock is known for his controversial theories that say that advanced civilizations may have existed during the Ice Age. The last Ice Age lasted from about 2.5 million years ago to roughly 11,700 years ago. During its peak, huge ice sheets covered large parts of North America, Europe, and Asia, making it a challenging time for human survival. Most archaeologists believe that humans during this period were mainly hunter-gatherers, moving from place to place in search of food and shelter. The idea that they had skills to build a massive pyramid-like structure is hard for many to accept. However, researchers like Graham Hancock argue that advanced Ice Age civilizations could have existed and been wiped out by cataclysmic events such as floods caused by melting glaciers. According to Hancock, these ancient cultures may have built monumental structures like pyramids. One of Hancock's most notable books, Fingerprints of the Gods, explores this theory in depth. He looks at evidence from ancient monuments like Egypt's Great Pyramid of Giza and the megalithic structures in South America and suggests that these could be the remnants of a forgotten civilization. Hancock's theories imply that knowledge and skills passed down from this ancient culture were eventually rediscovered and used by later civilizations, like the Egyptians and Mayans. If we apply this to Gunung Padang, the idea becomes even more fascinating. Could this ancient site in Indonesia be a remnant of a long-lost civilization that existed during the last Ice Age? We'll have to keep digging to figure this out. Either way, while scientists debate the origins of Gunung Padang, local myths offer a different explanation. One of the most famous local legends tells the story of King Siliwangi, a powerful ruler who wanted to build a grand palace in a single night. With supernatural strength, he began stacking enormous stones to create his masterpiece. But as the first light of dawn appeared, he realized he had failed to finish in time. Frustrated, he abandoned the project, leaving behind the massive rock formations that we see today. While this story isn't historical fact, it reflects how deeply Gunung Padang is embedded in the local culture. Even today, the site is considered a place of spiritual energy, attracting visitors who believe in its mystical power. Hindus from the island of Bali climb the mountain steps to conduct rituals related to the rising of the full moon. Followers of a variant of Indonesian martial art practice their discipline high on the mountain. As these sacred rituals continue, archaeology and geology keep trying to figure out if this really is the oldest man-made structure in the world. They finally did it. After 300 years of searching, archaeologists pinned down the location of the lost land of the white jaguar, the city of Maya hidden in the wild jungles of Mexico. It all kicked off back in the 1500s with the Lacandon Maya. These guys were some super tough survivors who just didn't quit. When their main capital, Lacamtun, fell to the Spanish in 1586, most people would have called it game over, but not the Lacandon. Nope, they packed up, headed deeper into the rainforest, and built their last stronghold, Sak Bahlán. It was a hidden fortress of stone temples, twisty jungle trails, and howler monkeys acting like noisy little guards. For over 100 years, the Lacandon managed to keep their traditions alive there, far from European control. Then, in 1695, history came crashing in. A Spanish friar named Diego de Ribas stumbled into Sak Bahlán. And yeah, that was basically the beginning of the end. Soon after, the Spanish took over. By 1721, the Maya had abandoned Sak Bahlán. The jungle didn't waste time. It swallowed the place whole, with roots tearing into walls and vines smothering plazas. The city didn't just disappear, it got eaten alive. For the next 300 years, Sak Bahlán turned into more of a myth than a memory. A name archaeologists and explorers would whisper, secretly hoping to find it one day. Plenty of expeditions tried to track it down, but the rainforest is sneaky. Every path looks identical, maps fall apart in the humidity, and even GPS can't cut through the thick green ceiling. It was like looking for a needle in a haystack. Except the haystack was alive, covered in thorns, and yeah, crawling with jaguars that would happily make you lunch. So how did the scientists crack the mystery? One word: a letter from the 17th century. The letter by Diego de Ribas described all the routes, rivers, and trails leading to Sak Bahlán. It showed in every detail the journey of the soldiers who walked 4 days to the Lakuntun River after leaving Sak Bahlán. Then they sailed for 2 days and arrived at the church El Encuentro de Cristo, left their canoes, and continued on foot to Lake Petén Itzá in Guatemala. This was already detailed enough, but the scientists needed to pinpoint the exact location with geographic information systems. They took into account vegetation layers and how much each person was carrying to map an approximate range where Sak Bahlán should be. They fed this information to GIS and calculated where the city should be. And bingo, it worked. Archaeologists traveled through the jungle and found stone temples rising like broken teeth from the earth. There were also some tools and ceramics, and a Spanish church right in the middle of the ruins. The discovery isn't just about cool ruins, it rewrites history. For decades, people assumed the Lacandons simply scattered after Lakamtun fell, but Sak Bahlán proves they regrouped, fought, and preserved their culture for over a century more. It's like discovering the final chapter of a book we thought ended too soon. There's also irony here. The Spanish friar who revealed Sak Bahlán helped doom it. Yet his letter, centuries later, also helped save its memory. Today, the ruins sit inside a biosphere reserve, protected by the same jungle that once hid them. Tourists can't just waltz in. It's raw, tangled, alive. The city breathes again, but on its own terms. Scientists just uncovered another lost city, buried under the thick jungles of Mexico. It had been hiding there for 600 years. The place is called Guiengola, and it's massive, about 360 hectares with more than 1,100 buildings, 2.5 miles of defensive walls, its own network of roads, and a super organized city plan. Because it was so deep in the jungle, you'd never realize how huge it really was unless you spent years hiking through it. But modern tech swooped in to save the day, using LiDAR, a kind of laser scanning tool. Researchers flew over the site, and in just 2 hours, they had a full 3D map of the entire city. Guiengola was built sometime between 1350 and 1521, back in pre-Columbian times, and it used to be buzzing with life. It was a major hub for the Zapotec people, who had been around in the region since about 600 BCE. Families there lived in homes with big central patios surrounded by rooms, and as they got new members, they just add more rooms and stretch their houses out. They even used the mountains around them as natural walls and channeled mountain water for drainage. A lot of their buildings are still standing, which is wild considering how much time has passed. By the late 1400s, the Zapotec were real powerhouses along the Pacific coast. They even fought off the Aztecs, who were constantly trying to expand. At Guiengola, they survived a brutal 7-month siege. But even though hiding in the mountains kept them safe, it wasn't perfect. They didn't have enough fresh water or farmland to feed everyone. Just 12 miles away, the smaller city of Tehuantepec had what they needed. So the Zapotec moved there right before the Spanish arrived in 1521. What the scientists have seen so far is just scratching the surface. That LiDAR scan revealed more than 1,000 buildings, and archaeologists are planning years of research to figure it all out. Instead of digging everything up and risking damage, they'll use advanced scanning tech to keep studying the city safely. Alright, now let's hop across the world to Egypt, where archaeologists stumbled on a whole lost city called Imet, tucked away in the eastern Nile Delta. The place was buried under layers of mud, water, and time, hiding in a swamp that's been shifting and changing for thousands of years. Scientists first noticed it from way up high in faint little clusters of mud brick foundations in satellite images. The shapes looked shaky and ghost-like, but too neat to be natural. So they followed the patterns down on the ground, started digging, and the city started coming back to life. They found multi-story tower houses, basically mini skyscrapers of the ancient world. They had multiple floors, thick foundations, and could handle some serious weight. That kind of vertical living is super rare in Egypt, especially outside the Nile Delta. It showed that people in Imet weren't just spreading across the land, but stacking upward, which means the city was packed, carefully planned, and way more urban than anyone thought for that time. And it wasn't just fancy housing either. Archaeologists also uncovered a grain processing center with paved work areas, animal pens, and organized spaces for food production. Clearly, this was a city with a real economy running behind it. Not far from there, they spotted a ceremonial road that once led to a temple for Wadjet, Imet's patron deity. But later on, other buildings got plunked down over the road, which shows that Wadjet's worship faded over time. Still, the ruins coughed up some amazing relics, a green faience little funerary figurine, and a stela showing Harpocrates perched on crocodiles and gripping snakes. He was the Greek spin on Horus, deity of silence, secrets, and the newborn sun. And there was even a bronze sistrum, an ancient Egyptian musical instrument decorated with twin heads of Hathor. Turns out, Imet was active from around the 4th century BCE onward, stretching from Egypt's late period into the Roman era. Its location along trade routes made it a magnet for merchants and pilgrims visiting Wadjet's temple. So it wasn't just hanging on, it was thriving, connecting, trading, and adapting with the times. And this isn't just another dusty ruin. Imet is giving us a window into everyday life, religion, and urban planning in the Delta, which we've always known way less about compared to the big pyramids and tombs.
Hey, I bet you didn't know that trees used to grow in the middle of Egypt's barren, sun-roasted Sinai desert. It's true. If you can't picture it, I don't blame you. But archaeologists have recently stumbled upon a tree-lined boulevard. Yep, an actual green avenue leading to a massive ancient fortress. No, this isn't some mirage or an overactive imagination, although I do have one. But it's turning our ideas of ancient Egyptian desert life upside down. Let's rewind a bit. The site in question is called Telibu Ciphi, located in the northern part of the Sinai Peninsula. For a long time, it was known as a dusty archaeological footnote, the home of ruins from the Ptolemaic and Roman periods. You know, the era after Alexander the Great swaggered through Egypt and the Roman Empire called dibs. But recently, Egypt's Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities decided to give it a fresh dig. And what they found out turned to be more than just a forgotten outpost. We're talking about a full-on military fortress with defensive trenches, paved roads, lime kilns, barracks for soldiers, and even room for their families. A whole bunch of living quarters right in the middle of a desert doesn't feel very homey until you remember our star, the unexpected Green Avenue. This road was over 300 feet long and 36 feet wide, as long as an American football field, paved with limestone slabs and lined with more than 500 clay planting pits. These weren't for show, they held actual trees, creating a shaded tree-line entrance straight to the fortress. Imagine walking through that, the sun blazing overhead, and suddenly, blessed shade. Ooh. Now, that's not just a grand entrance, that's an ancient red carpet, or maybe a green one. But this wasn't about curb appeal. The existence of hundreds of trees in a desert landscape over 2,000 years ago tells us something big. You see, the Ptolemaic Egyptians weren't simply good at building monuments, they were also masters of water management. In a place where rainfall is rarer than a selfie with a pharaoh, they somehow found a way to grow rows of trees. Now, let that sink in. To irrigate that many trees in a desert, they must have had a sophisticated irrigation or water transport system, something capable of moving and distributing water efficiently in this harsh climate. Maybe they channeled groundwater, or maybe they captured seasonal rain, or maybe ancient sprinkler systems. Okay, maybe not that fancy. But still, it's clear they were ahead of their time. Here's the thing, we already know the Egyptians mastered water control. They harnessed the Nile with ditches and canals to feed distant fields. So irrigation wasn't exactly a mystery to them. They had the skills and the knowledge. And sure, scientists still debate what the Sinai climate was like 2,000 years ago. But many believe it may have once been greener. After all, take one look at those dramatic mountains and rocky landscapes, shaped and sculpted as if by brute force of ancient rivers. And it's hard not to think that water once played a bigger role out there. Plus, archaeologists have found tons of evidence showing that Ptolemaic Egyptians cultivated fruits, vines, and trees on a large scale. In other words, growing a forest in a desert might feel wild to us, but to them, it was just another Tuesday. And now, this green avenue is making archaeologists wonder, what if similar irrigation systems were used elsewhere, say for transporting the enormous stones used to build the pyramids? There's already a theory that ancient rivers or human-made canals helped move those stones. And the Telibu Ciphi discovery? Well, it might just be the missing puzzle piece. This isn't just a dream. Back then, rivers were like highways, power grids, and cargo trains of the ancient world, all rolled into one. Egyptians used them for everything – irrigating crops, trading goods, powering industry, and even mobilizing for war. If you were doing something important, odds are it involved a river. But wait, it gets even better. Excavations revealed deep defensive trenches, like ancient moats, dug more than 6 feet deep around the fortress. Those weren't just muddy ditches. They were part of an elaborate defense system designed to be filled or bridged to control access. Think of it as ancient Egypt's version of a retractable security gate, minus the hydraulics. And while the trenches were keeping intruders out, life inside the fortress was bustling. Remember how we said archaeologists had found military housing units? It turns out soldiers might have lived there with their families. So this wasn't just a barracks, it was a thriving community, with meals, routines, kids playing, and probably a whole lot of ancient gossip flying around the dinner table. In addition to all the military stuff, researchers found 4 massive lime kilns used to produce quicklime, an essential ingredient for making construction mortar. These kilns are a big deal because they suggest that during the later Roman period, Telibu Ciphi turned into an industrial hub. It was like the Home Depot of ancient Egypt, churning out materials to build and repair buildings. But here's where the plot thickens. Underneath all of this, beneath the roads, the trenches, the kilns, archaeologists found the corners of an even older structure, a mystery building. Could it be the remains of a third, much older fortress? Or an ancient cemetery or lost city? Nobody knows yet, but one thing's clear, this story isn't over. Honestly, this might be the coolest archaeological cliffhanger of the decade. So, what does this all mean? Well, for starters, it challenges everything we assumed about desert life in ancient Egypt. For the longest time, deserts were thought of as natural barriers, dry, deadly, and empty. But this find suggests that the desert might have once been green and full of life, not because the climate was dramatically different, but because the Egyptians were incredibly good at bending the environment to their will. They didn't just survive in the desert, they transformed it. It also adds fuel to the fire in the age-old debate about ancient Egyptian tech. If they could build a fortress with tree-lined roads, moats, irrigation, and industry in the middle of the Sinai, is it really such a stretch to imagine they could engineer water channels to move pyramid stones? Forget the Ancient Aliens TV show. Sure, it's entertaining, I'll give you that, but it makes us forget something crucial. Those people were brilliant. A lot of what we call modern technology is recycled ancient ingenuity. And who knows how much knowledge we've lost over time. Meanwhile, the dig continues. Scientists are now mapping the entire Telibu Ciphi site, trying to piece together how all the structures connect. Some want to analyze soil samples to find traces of old tree roots and maybe even figure out what kinds of trees once grew there. Imagine if they were date palms. We might be looking at the world's oldest snack lane. You already know that the implications of the discoveries don't stop with history books, right? This kind of discovery has modern relevance too. Our world is going through a lot of change, with crazy weather and huge heat waves. So maybe we should be asking, what can we learn from ancient civilizations that once made the desert bloom? If nothing else, Telibu Ciphi reminds us that the ancient Egyptians were more than just pharaohs, pyramids, and mummies. They were visionary planners, eco-architects, and straight-up problem solvers. They didn't wait for nature to hand them what they needed. They engineered it. And thanks to discoveries like this, we're getting a clearer picture of just how advanced and, frankly, how cool ancient Egyptian civilization really was. So next time someone tells you deserts are just empty wastelands, you can hit them with this fun fact. Over 2,000 years ago, in the heart of the Sinai Desert, there was a fortress with a tree-lined avenue, moats, military housing, an industrial center, and even a secret underground structure. Take that, sand dunes! Who knows what else is still buried out there, waiting to rewrite history? The Sahara Desert is like a Mad Max movie. Scorching heat, endless dunes, and an overall barren wasteland. A place where no one could live, right? Well, forget all you know about it, because 5,000 years ago, the Sahara was a lush paradise of grasslands, lakes, and rivers, and the home of a ghost civilization that vanished without a trace. Our tale begins in the 1930s, when a Hungarian explorer stumbled upon a cave in the middle of the Sahara. Inside, he found something bizarre: ancient rock paintings of people swimming in a lake, surrounded by giraffes, hippos, and crocodiles. At the time, everybody shrugged it off as some symbolic depiction of the afterlife, because, really, who would imagine a lake in the Sahara? Well, fast forward some 70 years later, when a group of archaeologists made a discovery that flipped the script. In a rock shelter in Libya, they unearthed 15 mummies, along with baskets, ceramic pots, and other everyday items. This may look like prehistoric junk to most people, but to archaeologists, it was like uncovering a key piece of evidence. Those people weren't just passing through, they lived here. You see, those weren't just any mummies. They were some of the oldest naturally mummified humans ever found, dating back over 7,000 years. Take that, Egypt. Two of them still had readable DNA, preserved thanks to a rare natural mummification process, almost a miracle considering the Sahara's climate's ability to turn everything into, well, beef jerky. Scientists struggled to understand where those mummies came from for a while, because the mitochondrial DNA they recovered was not helpful at all. But thanks to scientific progress, they eventually managed to do a full genome analysis that revealed some weird secrets. Those people belonged to a human lineage that was completely unknown, and they lived isolated from the rest of humanity for thousands of years. For decades, researchers assumed that the place where they lived, the Green Sahara, was like a prehistoric highway, a lush corridor that humans and animals used to migrate between sub-Saharan Africa and the Mediterranean. But the mummies demolished that theory, like a hippo sitting on a sandcastle. Their DNA showed zero genetic mixing with sub-Saharan and Eurasian migrants, keeping their genes pure for 7,000 years. Their closest genetic relatives weren't their neighbors living right below the famous desert, but some ancient hunter-gatherers from Morocco, and even some guys that lived in the Czech Republic, when it wasn't even a country yet, 50,000 years ago. We're not out of the woods yet, because those mummies also carried some teeny-tiny traces of Neanderthal DNA, just 10% of the amount found in modern Eurasians. Now, if you paid attention in school, then you know that Neanderthals lived in Europe and Asia, and early humans only mixed with them after migrating out of Africa. But those Green Sahara folks never left Africa. So how did they get Neanderthal genes? The leading theory is that their ancestors mingled with Neanderthals in North Africa 50,000 years ago before settling in the Sahara and cutting off contact with the outside world. Archaeologists also found cattle bones and tools made of stone and wood at that rock shelter, proving that those people led a thriving pastoral lifestyle. This discovery made scientists scratch their heads for a while because, you see, animal domestication was not developed in Africa. So how did they learn it if they never mingled with anyone? Did they have ancient YouTube tutorials? Probably not. The researchers believe they must have traded knowledge with neighboring groups, but just knowledge, no saliva. It's almost too hard to believe that no outsiders mixed with them. After all, who wouldn't want to live in a thriving civilization in the middle of a green paradise, drinking milk, eating meat, and even using animal blood as a protein source? Ooh, yummy. They didn't have to hunt for every meal, thanks to their livestock, and the abundant water made life pretty sweet. And yet, they never married outsiders. Why? Maybe it was a cultural choice to never date outside their own group. Or maybe the landscape itself kept them isolated. This is where scientists place their bets. They believe that the dense forests and rivers that existed in the Green Sahara acted like nature's no trespassing sign, creating a geographical barrier that isolates animals, plants, and whole societies. This isolation is the reason why their genes were so unique. These guys weren't swapping spit with anyone else. But this genetic time capsule almost didn't survive. For most of the last ice age, the Sahara was even harsher than today, a true dead zone where humans couldn't survive. 70,000 years ago, even the toughest people disappeared, retreating to the Nile Valley and the Mediterranean coast. Why? Because Earth was a climate bully. Massive glaciers stole all the moisture, weakening monsoons until rain clouds barely reached North Africa. Then came the knockout punches. Armadas of icebergs flooded the North Atlantic, triggering devastating droughts each time. This was the Sahara's ultimate keep-out era. Now, you're probably wondering how in the world the Sahara turned green after all this, and then went back to being a desert again. Well, it all started 15,000 years ago — I wasn't around then — when Earth was shaking off the last ice age. Our planet's axis was a bit wobbly, and because of that, the northern hemisphere got closer to the sun, getting extra sunlight and heat. This eternal summer turned North Africa into a giant moisture magnet, pulling water from the Atlantic and making it all rain down on the Sahara. The result of this ridiculous amount of rain was a lush savanna, complete with lakes the size of small countries. But the African humid period was not just a one-time miracle. The truth is, this eternal on and off switch between green and desert happened to the Sahara more than 230 times since the desert was born. During one of these events, the Sahara even expanded, getting bigger than it is today. So when the Green Sahara showed up, you can bet it brought the ultimate ecosystem glow-up. This wasn't just a light dusting of grass. We're talking full makeover. The transformation was so complete, it even reshaped animal populations. Cheetahs suddenly struggled with the new prey dynamics, while rodents like the multi-mammate mouse thrived in the suddenly abundant grasslands. But don't pack your prehistoric swim trunks just yet. This paradise had teeth. The Sahara was an ecological maze of crocodile-infested rivers, malaria-carrying mosquitoes, and big cats lurking in the tall grass. Crossing it would have been like playing a real-life game of Hungry Hungry Hippos. This is probably why more groups didn't settle permanently. The Sahara's climate cycled between wet and dry every 20,000 years, hardly a stable zip code. For most ancient people, it was smarter to treat the Green Sahara like an all-you-can-eat buffet, grab resources and leave before the desert returned. Still, this Green Sahara period lasted for 10,000 years, giving our mystery shepherds plenty of time to thrive. But around 5,000 years ago, Earth's axis shifted again, the rains moved away, and the Sahara dried up faster than a puddle in July. As the desert returned, the shepherds from the Green Sahara had no choice but to pack up their livestock and leave. Some researchers believe they migrated toward the Nile, laying the groundwork for ancient Egypt, so I guess their legacy lives on. Besides, their pure lineage may be extinct by now, but some faint genes of the mummies can still be found in the people that live in North Africa today. But the introvert mummies were not the only ones using the Green Sahara as an Airbnb. They actually had neighbors just around the corner, in a lakeside village in Niger to be exact. Those people thrived for 5,000 years and left behind the oldest Sahara Desert cemetery, including a man buried in a turtle shell, a grinning Halloween man with filed teeth, and a heartbreaking family embrace frozen in time, victims of the very waters that sustained them. Eventually, those people disappeared too, just like it happened to our antisocial friends. This proves that this desert outsmarts everyone, with a landscape that gives paradise with one hand and takes it away with the other.
A Portuguese archaeologist just discovered a bunch of sunken ships filled with gold, including a Spanish galleon with 22 tons of gold and silver. This much gold today is worth about $2 billion, and this is the money from one ship alone. Archaeologist Alexandre Monteiro made this discovery almost by accident. He was studying some documents when he found some information about a ship that went missing in 1615, and he decided he wanted to find it. After many years, Alexandre found not just this specific ship, he actually discovered 8,620 shipwrecks in the waters of Portugal alone. Out of this number, 250 are gold-filled shipwrecks, a discovery that would make any Jack Sparrow shake in his boots. Most of these ships went down for boring reasons like the weather, but sometimes they were destroyed in battles, which may or may not have been super epic. They were carrying gold and other treasures from the New World to Europe, and of course, everyone wanted a share. Alexandre had been studying historical shipwrecks for 30 years now, so he has discovered many ships that went down in somewhat glorious ways. In 1816, for example, a ship of one of the richest men in Portugal sank in Australia, with an insane amount of 66,000 silver coins. This was the first ship from Portugal to ever plunge in the waters of Australia. The bad news is that these ancient sunken vessels, filled with riches and epic stories, are not so easy to reach. They're deep down in the ocean and covered by sand. You could still try, but that would be stealing part of a country's history, and you wouldn't want to be that person, would you? Naturally, Portugal was not the only country that explored the seas back then. The coast of Europe is packed with sunken ships filled with gold. In fact, there are about 1 million historical shipwrecks underwater right now, and the treasures abandoned under the sea might be worth around $60 billion. It's an insane amount of money, but let me tell you that these gold-filled sunken ships aren't really worth the hassle. There are many stories of maritime treasure discoveries that turned into insane lawsuits and even long jail time. Our first story starts in 1746, when a violent storm crashed a ship called Prince de Conti near an island in Brittany. The ship was filled with tea, ceramics, and 100 gold ingots. Of course, the owners of the ship tried to save the loot, but if it's not easy now, imagine how it was back in the 18th century. It took more than 200 years for the vessel to be found. It finally happened in 1975, when a group of French men discovered it and decided to take pretty much every valuable thing they could find. Now, I said these things were not worth the trouble for a reason. In France, if you find anything that can be historical, you must declare it to the local authorities within 48 hours. Fail to comply, and you will be committing something known as a crime. To be fair, our French friends here did declare their findings, but only the corroded cannons from the ship. And the gold? Well, they sold it. Obviously, because each gold bar is worth between $125,000 to $231,000. It took French authorities almost 50 years to retrieve the stolen gold, and they didn't retrieve all of it. Part of it was bought by an elderly couple living in Florida, and the crime is so serious they were charged for connection with money laundering, organized crime, and the trafficking of cultural goods. The poachers also sold some gold ingots to the British Museum collection. Now, let's go back to the 1850s, when a steamer called SS Central America traveled from Panama to California and back again. This was during the Californian Gold Rush, a time when 300,000 people moved to California to dig for gold. Because the travel route was not easy breezy, people needed to carry their gold around on big ships. This is where our friend SS Central America comes in. In 1857, the ship had 578 people on board and about 10 tons of gold. Very few survived, and around $100 to $150 million in gold went down with the ship. All of this explains why in 1988, a group of investors from Columbus decided to finance a research project to find this ship. The research was led by a guy named Tommy Thompson, Tommy was really crazy about the idea of finding this sunken ship filled with gold. It took him years to find the exact location of the SS Central America, especially because the ship was 7,500 feet beneath the surface of the Atlantic Ocean, and retrieving it required a lot of fancy tech. A group of 161 investors paid for his adventure, but it goes without saying that they were not doing this out of love from their hearts. They invested $12.5 million in this project because they were expecting to earn at least 10 times more. But since life is not all sunshine and rainbows, 39 insurance companies sued the research team as soon as they retrieved the gold. Back when the ship was up and running, these companies insured the cargo of the SS Central America, and when the cargo was finally retrieved, more than 100 years later, they wanted to be compensated. They said it was not their job to retrieve it, but that doesn't mean they abandoned it. This crazy talk didn't stick, and 92% of the gold was given to the research team. The plot thickened when the investors were scammed by none other than Tommy Thompson, who fled with $4.16 million. He also had 500 gold coins, but he's not telling a soul where they are. Nonsense like this is the reason why most countries have rules to protect cultural properties. And yes, sometimes shipwrecks can be a cultural property. Obviously, there are many maritime treasure discoveries that happen without breaking any laws. The SS City of Cairo, for example, was a steamship that submerged in 1929 with 2,000 boxes of silver coins weighing 122 tons. A company called Deep Ocean Search retrieved the coins from a depth of 17,000 feet, which is 4,500 feet lower than the Titanic. 34 million pounds went to the UK Treasury, and the Deep Ocean Search also got a share. The good news here is that some of the coins can be bought by collectors, legally. Paying for a treasure is probably the closest you can get to an underwater archaeology find. I know, all I did was destroy your piracy dreams. But while raiding gold-filled shipwrecks may be a crime in most countries, or just financially impossible for us mere mortals, not all hope is lost. There is about $771 trillion worth of gold lying on the ocean floor, and it doesn't have an owner. It's like an underwater gold mine, except the gold is in the water. You know how the water of the ocean is salty? Well, the gold gets mixed with the minerals in the water, so it's not like you stumble upon a gold nugget on the beach. Each liter of ocean water has 13 billionths of a gram of gold, and it's very difficult to extract such tiny particles of gold from the water. But that doesn't mean people haven't tried, and, of course, there's been a scam here too. In the 1890s, a guy claimed he had invented a thing that would suck gold from the seawater. When he got enough money, he fled the country with the cash. If you really want to get some gold, you could try to extract it from the Earth's core, which has 1.6 quadrillion tons of gold. There's 16 times more gold in the Earth's core than what humans have mined in the whole of history. No hoax involved here, because nobody has dared to go down there yet. With archaeologists discovering gold-filled sunken ships out and about, maybe we can make our own maritime treasure discoveries, or at least save enough money to buy some silver coins.
Archaeologists have been studying Petra in Jordan for 200 years, and in 2024, they found something they had never seen before. It's a tomb with at least 12 complete human skeletons and artifacts that are over 2,000 years old right in front of the treasury. Bronze, iron, and ceramic items were placed with the deceased, which shows how people honored their loved ones when they passed away. It's a rare chance for scientists to learn more about the Nabateans, an ancient group of Arabian nomads who built Petra. The objects found in the tomb under Petra's treasury are in amazing condition, but the skeletons became fragile because it's damp inside the tomb. They plan to study the remains and extract DNA to see if the people in the tomb were related. While some scientists are solving tomb mysteries, others have trained AI to find new ancient sites for them. They've created an algorithm that works with a special type of satellite imagery. This technique uses radio waves that can peek under things like sand, soil, and even ice to find hidden objects. AI will help search a huge desert on the Arabian Peninsula called the Empty Quarter for archaeological treasures. The lead scientists of the experiment trained the algorithm to recognize hidden locations using data from a site they had found before. The new tech can discover buried structures within 20 inches, which is very precise. Another groundbreaking tech, LiDAR, which means light detection and ranging, helped archaeologists reveal new hidden cities all around the world. LiDAR can see big structures beneath layers of vegetation and map even subtle changes in ancient landscapes. They use it to scan large areas from a small plane flying over places that aren't so easy to study from the ground, like dense jungle. In 2024 alone, they found new Maya settlements in southern Mexico, gardens, roads, and rivers in Ecuador's Amazon rainforest, ancient ruins on the Pacific island of Tonga, and the remains of 2 medieval cities along the Silk Road route in Uzbekistan. Maybe some smart technology can also explain what Marge Simpson is doing on Earth in an ancient Egyptian tomb from 3,000 years ago. The drawing, featuring a woman with yellow-colored skin, a blue crown, and a green outfit, is alarmingly like the famous cartoon character. If you don't see a resemblance here, I hope you'll at least enjoy an amazingly well-preserved necklace with amethyst and agate beads. It's from another recent find from Egypt, an ancient tomb with 11 sealed burials near Luxor. Archaeologists also found 2 copper mirrors, one with a lotus-shaped handle and the second with a unique design of the deity of the sky, women, fertility, and love in ancient Egypt. The hair of the figurine was originally made from almost 4,000 mud beads. Another awesome find from 2024 is an ancient Greek shrine with intact burials, a sarcophagus, and plenty of gold inside. They think it was built before the year 300 before the Common Era, and the marble lions, also found inside, were made from the same marble as the Parthenon in Athens. Greece is so full of ancient treasures that the city of Thessaloniki will house around 300,000 of those artifacts in their new subway system. Meanwhile, archaeologists in France have found a monument unlike any other, and they can't figure out what it was used for. It's direct proof that people used to live here between the Neolithic and the early Iron Age periods. The coolest part is a monument made of 3 unique shapes that fit together like puzzle pieces. Some gravel found in the monument could mean there used to be a wooden fence called a palisade. People who built it probably used it for protection or decoration. The team studied the layers of soil around the monument to learn more about its origins. The only tools found so far were sharp flint stones, not the cartoon characters, which were used during the Neolithic period. The next step will be radiocarbon dating to figure out exactly how old the site is. Now, the oldest saddle ever found so far was found in the grave of a woman near the edge of the Taklamakan Desert in northwest China. This saddle is the oldest ever discovered. It was crafted from pieces of leather that were sewn together and stuffed with straw and animal hair to make it soft. Now, normally, things made from natural materials like this don't last very long because they rot or fall apart. But the Taklamakan Desert is so dry that it helped preserve the artifact. The herdswoman who used the saddle was buried in her full riding attire, so this proves that not only men used saddles and took part in herding and traveling. Now let's shift to Guatemala, where an ornate jade mask made by the ancient Maya people was waiting for centuries to be discovered. Scientists use radiocarbon dating to figure out the age of the mask. They believe the mask may represent a Maya storm deity, a powerful figure in their mythology. These kinds of masks were often made to honor Maya royalty, and they were placed in the tombs of kings and queens when they were buried. The king's tomb was also decorated with carvings made using tools crafted from volcanic obsidian. After 15 years of searching, scientists may have finally figured out where the altar stone of Stonehenge comes from. They compared the tiny minerals inside the altar stone with rocks from many places in Wales and England and ruled out lots of spots. Then they found the perfect match with a place in Scotland, more than 466 miles away from Stonehenge. This area might even be Orkney, a group of islands in the far northeast of Scotland where a lot was going on during the Neolithic period. The big question now is how ancient people moved such a massive stone so far. The altar stone is over 16 feet long and weighs more than 6 tons. The new theory is that they might have used boats to carry it across the coastline and rivers. Once it was close to Stonehenge, they theoretically dragged it across the land using wooden sleds, ropes, and a lot of teamwork. Meanwhile, in the north of France, an ancient home popped to the surface during the construction of a new house. It turned out to be a luxury urban house for the elite from the 2nd century of the Common Era. The inside of the house was destroyed by a fire, but under the destroyed layer, there are beautiful, real-size fresco paintings. Turkish archaeologists unearthed the arm and foot bones of elephants that lived around 9 million years ago. They also found fossils of early horses, giraffes, and even saber-toothed cats. They've already identified 43 distinct types of animals from this site and collected more than 4,000 fossils. One more cool find from Turkey is a 64,000-year-old workshop inside Enkaja Cave. It looks like people used it for 24,000 years non-stop. There are some tools inside, like flakes and blades, which were made inside the workshop. In eastern Turkey, a farmer accidentally found a 1,000-square-foot mosaic from the late Roman or early Byzantine period just beneath the dirt. Experts say it's a one-of-a-kind thing from this region, and it's still in one piece after all this time. The pattern shows dozens of trees, plants, and animals that were found in ancient Turkey. There could be more treasures in the area, so they plan to keep digging. Our final stop will be in Sicily, where archaeologists uncovered a huge ancient thermal complex. Inside, they found 2 rooms with floors covered in colorful mosaic designs, along with a large courtyard surrounded by arched wings. As they kept digging, they discovered more parts of the ancient city. They found new roads and the remains of a huge complex, along with stretches of old stone walls that were part of the city's fortifications. These discoveries are helping scientists imagine what the city might have looked like during ancient times. No one knows for sure whether the bathhouse was built by the Greeks or the Romans, since both civilizations lived in Sicily long ago.
Strange and amazing items are discovered often, but figuring out what our ancestors were up to is pretty tough. Especially when all you have are just some rusty cups and cave drawings. It's no surprise that even the experts in lab coats sometimes make mistakes. But it's not just about dusty plates and huge stones. Sometimes there's even humans with large heads. So grab your digging tools and let's travel back to ancient times to explore incredible societies that even scientists can't fully explain. Sardinia may look idyllic now, but I'm not gonna lie, I wouldn't fancy visiting it 3,000 years ago. Rumor has it, terrible giants roamed around this island back then. People even talk about finding human skeletons over 13 feet tall there, although nobody's ever shown anything to prove it. But the stories will make you wonder because some weird stuff has definitely happened. In 1974, over 5,000 pieces of broken stone artifacts were found in a part of the island called Monte Prama, but instead of being displayed in a museum, they were locked up in an underground vault for about 30 years. Sounds a bit suspicious, doesn't it? When they were finally displaced in 2005, scientists put the pieces together to find statues of 38 giant men standing 8 feet tall. Not quite as tall as the legendary skeletons, but still pretty huge. It's thought these statues were made by the Nuragic people, who lived on the island a long time ago. Besides giant statues, they also built over 8,000 massive stone buildings. Perhaps Nuragic weren't giants themselves, but they definitely liked their things big. I do too. I like a big number of likes on our videos. That would be pretty great. Thank you if you liked this and subscribed. Now back to the video. You and I are pretty smart, but we might not be the smartest humans ever. Actually, we might not even be the smartest species. Since 1913, some skull fossils found in South Africa have hinted at a possibly smarter contender called Boskop Man. This human-like species might have lived as recently as 10,000 years ago. Their skull suggests they had really big heads, which means their brains could have been 30% bigger than ours. Wow! Their average IQ could have been around 149, making them among the smartest 0.05% of people today. But if a Boskop brainiac was so much smarter, why are they not around and we are? Well, bigger isn't always better, you know. Our brains are a lot bigger than our ape relatives, mainly in the prefrontal cortex. This part helps with high-level tasks like making decisions, remembering things short-term, and being aware of ourselves. The parts of the brain that handle our senses and movements haven't really grown much. So, maybe the Boskop spent too much time dwelling on the past rather than doing practical things like hunting. But this is all just guessing. We really don't know what happened to these clever cousins of ours. Some people even argue that Boskops weren't any different from us, with the only evidence being parts of skulls. The jungle is huge. Did you know the Amazon rainforest is home to about 30% of all the world's plant and animal species? That's impressive. However, the history of one native species, humans, has long puzzled scientists. The mysterious Kasarabe people lived here for hundreds of years and then vanished around 1400 AD. People thought the Amazon only had a few scattered tribes, but recently we discovered big, unusual shapes in the ground called geoglyphs. These might look like simple shallow ditches, but they're actually the remains of a vast civilization that spread over 5,000 square miles and includes about 450 markings, some as wide as 1,300 feet. That's insane! They likely contained ceremonial buildings and could have hosted up to 1 million people as recently as 550 years ago. Thanks to new technology like LiDAR, which uses a safe laser to map the forest without harming it, we can explore deeper. In 2019, some scans showed miles of raised roads and pathways and even pyramids over 70 feet tall. They found 26 separate settlements, 2 of which were at least 250 acres each. Damn, that's like 330 soccer fields. It's not certain what happened to the Kasarabe people. Maybe European conquistadors drove them out. Maybe the most baffling ancient civilization is one we've never actually found a trace of. Yep, I'm talking about Atlantis, the grand city that supposedly sank into the ocean. The first mentions of Atlantis come from the ancient Greek philosopher Plato, who talked about a great city near the Strait of Gibraltar. But for ages, everyone just thought Plato made up Atlantis as a perfect version of his own Athens. So why, about 12,000 years after it supposedly vanished, do we still wonder if it might be real? Well, in the 19th century, U.S. Congressman Ignatius Donnelly wrote a book giving 13 reasons why he thought Atlantis was more than just a myth. Then, in 1965, some folks thought they actually found Atlantis when they discovered the Richat structure, a massive 25-mile-wide dome in Mauritania, Africa. It's so big that you can see the whole thing from space. 2 astronauts flying over the Sahara Desert spotted this giant eye staring back at them and thought they'd made the discovery of a lifetime. Unfortunately, there's no solid evidence linking this structure to Atlantis. It's believed to have formed from volcanic activity about 100 million years ago. But it does look suspicious, doesn't it? Still, we're no closer to knowing the truth. Imagine going back to about 3,300 BCE and finding yourself in South Asia. Welcome to the Harappan civilization. These people were way ahead of their time. They had cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, complete with baked brick houses, sophisticated drainage systems, and even public baths. This place might have had over 5 million people, making it one of the densest regions at the time. They also invented a system of standardized weights that was incredibly useful for traders. And trading they did. These people had connections stretching all the way to the Middle East, thanks to their great skills in metallurgy. They even had a form of ancient branding. The seals were used to stamp clay on tray goods. Despite being so advanced with a thriving urban life, there's a whole bunch of mystery shrouding their language and script. We've got bits and pieces of their writing, but no one's deciphered them yet, even with all the technology we have today. We also still don't know how exactly their society worked. It looks like they didn't flaunt their social status as much as other civilizations. No grand palaces or massive monuments. Instead, their largest buildings might have been granaries. They sure were practical. Unfortunately, all good things must come to an end. Around 1800 BCE, this bustling civilization started to decline, possibly due to shifts in river patterns. As the environment changed, the Harappans packed up, moving towards more hospitable lands. Ever heard of the Minotaur? The beast with a bull's head and a man's body, hunting the bravest travelers in a massive maze. Well, this wasn't just any old tale. It was one of the most popular dramas of the ancient world, and it was inspired by this place, the island of Crete. The Minoans lived here during the Bronze Age. They had stunning palaces, amazing frescoes, and a culture so rich it still fascinates historians to this day. They built places like Knossos, which was so complex with its multi-story buildings and elaborate hallways that it might have inspired the whole labyrinth myth. Their engineering was so ahead of its time that even their drainage systems were more advanced than what many of us have today. Let me know in the comments which of these stories you find the most fascinating, and thanks for watching.
It's 1898, and you're taking part in excavations in Saqqara. This place, not far away from Cairo, is full of ancient tombs and pyramids. You're in your Indiana Jones mood and hope to find something really phenomenal to become famous. Gold, manuscripts, treasure maps, mummies of famous pharaohs. Wait, a wooden bird? You're really disappointed as it looks like a regular toy. An old one, but still. Little do you know that years later, someone would propose that your bird was actually an ancient monoplane. So the artifact, nicknamed the Saqqara bird, is made of a sycamore tree. The birdie has a wingspan of just 7 inches and weighs around 40 grams. A perfect original souvenir from Egypt, I would say. It's over 2,000 years old and looks pretty plain, without any carvings of feathers or other intricate ornaments. It has a beak and eyes though, which makes our find look like a hawk, the emblem of the deity Horus. Its tail is rather unusual as it's squared, looks weirdly upright, and it seems like the sunken part of it was the place for a now missing piece. Humans love solving a good mystery, so there have been several attempts to explain the use of the birdie. First, quite simply, is that it was a ceremonial object. The second idea is that it was a toy for a child from some well-off family. It could have been some sort of boomerang, which was a popular concept in ancient Egypt. Then there was a theory that the bird had been used as a weather vane. But this one has been debunked as the figure doesn't have any holes or markings, except for the one made at the museum in Cairo to fix the exhibit on a stick. So there was no way to hang it in the past. Almost a century after the bird was found, Egyptologist Dr. Khalil Masiha proposed a new theory that it could have been a model of a monoplane. He believed the bird was missing a horizontal tailplane. Otherwise, it had its wings set at a right angle, similar to that of modern planes. It could have worked to generate the aerodynamic lift necessary for flights. Dr. Masiha also claimed that it was common at that time to place miniature models of technological inventions in tombs. So, did the ancient Egyptians really invent the plane in 200 BCE? That would make the Wright brothers, who are considered the inventors of aviation, really upset. They made one of their first flights only in 1903. There's just one way to know for sure, and that is to test the model. But you know, the ancient museum in Cairo would unlikely let one of their cherished exhibits fly around like a toy. That's why glider designer Martin Gregory built a similar model, this time of balsa wood, and concluded that even with the missing tailplane, the plane wasn't much of a flyer. Case solved? Not really. This didn't sound convincing enough to the History Channel, so they invited an aerodynamics expert to build another replica of the bird. He tested it in weather conditions similar to those in Egypt and was impressed with the little plane's abilities. So, if they did invent the prototype of a plane back in the times of pharaohs, it would be a good example of an oupart. That's an out-of-place artifact, an object that's way ahead of its time in terms of technology or history. And the Saqqara bird isn't the only example of such a revolutionary concept. In 1901, a group of divers retrieved the Antikythera mechanism from an underwater shipwreck near the Greek island of Antikythera. It's been dubbed the world's first analog computer, and it's currently dated around 100 BCE. The bronze mechanism could tell the position of the sun, moon, planets, and stars, as well as the lunar phase, the dates of upcoming solar eclipses, and even the speed at which the moon moves through the sky. No one's sure who used it and how or where it was made, but it's obvious that it's extremely precise and way too advanced for its time. The first flushing toilets in the world were invented in the middle of the 20th century. Just kidding. The ancient Minoans on the Mediterranean island of Crete and the Indus Valley civilization both came up with this brilliant invention at the same time, around 4,000 years ago. The plumbing and sanitation were so well done that no one managed to design anything better until 2,000 years later. One ancient Minoan lavatory was discovered at the Palace of Knossos. It looks like it had a wooden seat set over a tunnel that directed water from a rooftop reservoir to an underground sewer. Other varieties got water from jugs. Only the super rich people could afford all this glory. So if you wanted to shop for real estate back then, the flushing toilet would be a telltale sign you were in the rich neighborhood. Automated doors became a cool, seemingly new invention back in 1931. But the technology behind them is actually much older. Think the 1st century CE old. Mathematician and engineer Heron of Alexandria came up with a hydraulic system to open and close temple doors. To bring it into action, you need to light a fire to produce heat. There was a brass pot under the fire, half filled with water. The inventor connected the brass pot to containers that acted as weights. When the fire was burning, the water moved into the containers. They went down and pulled the ropes. It was nothing like a supermarket door that opens in front of you before you even have time to think. Heron's door took hours to open, and there was no way to stop the process. That's why they only opened the doors once a day before people entered the temple, to add some mysticism at the temple during ceremonies. Spooky. Looks like the first ever battery was invented in Baghdad around 2,000 years ago. A German archaeologist found this oval-shaped clay jar in 1938. Scientists are still not sure what purpose it served and who exactly invented it. There is a theory that it was used for electroplating objects with precious metals. When they filled it with a weak acid like vinegar, the battery produced around 1 volt of electricity. Another theory says it was a vessel for sacred scrolls. Would you like to buy contact lenses designed by Leonardo da Vinci himself? In 1508, he invented a glass lens with a funnel on one side. You were supposed to wear it with water inside to improve your vision. Sounds a bit uncomfortable, doesn't it? So, around a century later, French scientist René Descartes decided to improve the idea and make the cornea contact the future lenses. Contacts because they contact your eyes, get it? The glass tube with liquid did help improve vision, but blinking was sadly impossible. 2.5 centuries later, new technologies in the glass industry let scientists design contacts that would fit in the eye and even let the wearer blink. Thanks, guys! Still, those lenses were made of heavy blown glass and didn't let the eye breathe. About 50 years later, contacts became plastic, lightweight, unbreakable, and scratch-resistant, but still covering the entire eye. And then, in 1948, an English optical technician accidentally sanded down a plastic lens and figured out they'd still be in place even if they covered only the cornea. Imagine you're living in 19th century London and need to send a message to New York. It would have taken about 10 days to get there by ship. So when delivery time went from days to hours in 1858, it was a true sensation. The first message was sent by Queen Victoria herself. It was all made possible thanks to the transatlantic telegraph cable, running under the ocean. Sadly, the new cool invention only lasted a few weeks. It took years to bring it back to life.